Hello and welcome to week two's edition of the Base on Balls podcast. I'm your host, Cody. I am joined as always by Paul, and Braxton will be jumping in a little bit later in the show. So, Paul, how's it going, man? How was your week?
Personally, week was good. Everything was good. Doing good here. Fantasy wise, very much not a good week for me. And I know that we're going to get into it, but I have some things to say about my team. But overall, week was pretty good. Looks like across the league, scoring was high for the teams you'd expect, low for the teams you'd expect, and in the middle for the rest. So, good to be with you. Good to get into it.
Absolutely, and we will jump right in to the week two matchup results. Not too much surprising here, but I think let's get started with the most surprising result. Smells El Paso Chihuahuas taking down Homco's struggling Cannonballers, 479 to 443. Paul, I'll let you kind of dissect this up a little bit. What did you see with this matchup?
So I think the storyline here is Hamco. Last year we all kind of thought Hamco was underperforming, losing games he shouldn't have lost, um, underachieving as a team overall. And I think everyone in the league kind of thought, this is going to be his year. He's finally going to get it going. He's going to take advantage. But the reality is he really just hasn't. And I'm not sure at this point we can just chalk it up to bad luck. I think there's a little bit of a talent issue that's going on in Kannapolis. I mean, you look at his team, there's good players there. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt's a good player. Key Brian Hayes, I've pegged as a good breakout player this year. I mean, I think everybody has done that for the last few years, but um, Michael Harris is a great, probably top 15, top 20 outfielder. But it's just not coming together right now, and he's got to figure it out. We're 2 weeks in. It's a 20-week season. We're 10% of the way through the season already. I know it's sad and crazy to say, but I mean that's just the reality. And you gotta get wins. That's the only thing that matters at the end of the day in this league is if you win or lose. But I would be remiss if I didn't say something about Smell's team, as I did last week. I said Smell's team is bad because he asked me to. I will one more time say that. He did in the main chat ask me or ask us to say how bad his team was, but you know what? He had a good week this week. Not a great week, scoring under 500 points. Usually that results in losses in this league, but shout out Javier Assad from the Cubs. He had two good starts this week. Got the win today. And Ryan Nelson, who I gave him, just drops 28 points because every person I trade away just seems to have a good week the week after. So props to Smell. I know that winning necessarily isn't what he wants to do this year. He's in a full tank, as we all know. But, when you get wins, you get wins. You appreciate them all. You cherish them all. And I'll eat some crow this week for saying that his team was so bad last week. So props to Smell.
For sure, Smell deserves some congratulations, but you're right. The story from this matchup is Homco and the Cannonballers, and kind of where this team is. He had a down week one, but he won, and then he had a really down week two and took the loss to, I think, probably the consensus worst team in the league. So the Cannonballers are definitely down right now, but I caution against panicking here. Um, I do think this team is supremely loaded. I do think that the pitching is really beat up with injuries. Some guys are not coming back anytime soon, but some guys are. Um, I look around here and I really notice a lot of just just kind of weird performances that I think are going to improve. He got 13 points out of Jake Berger this week. Berger's going to provide more than that. All things considered, Michael Harris with 26 points over 25 at bats. That's going to be better. Castellanos 18 points over 28 at bats. Gleyber Torres 16 points over 24 at bats. Paul Goldschmidt 6 points across 22 at bats. So all those guys, I really think that the team is just kind of in a lull right now. I think that the right solution here is Homko to sit on this and see if these guys bounce back and recover, because most of the guys that I just named off, any betting man would put money on that they would bounce back. But I know it's got to be frustrating to be Homko, to be in this position at 1-1, and the team playing so down. But we will move on now to another matchup, definitely worthy of talking about. It got kind of interesting on Sunday. It was John Hite's Hartford Yard Goats 708 against Bry's Rocky Mountain Vibe 651. So this ended up being a 57-point matchup, 58-point matchup, 57 point matchup. Hite pretty much led wire to wire. But Bry did make it interesting in the end. I do want to mention we give Hite a lot of crap on this show, but this week marks 23 consecutive matchups, including last year's playoffs with a win. That's pretty remarkable what John Hite's doing. So I mean, his tenure in this league right now is 23-0. That definitely deserves to be mentioned here. Paul, I'll let you talk about this matchup a little bit. What did you see here?
So, I mean, are we just going to throw a party when John Hite finally loses?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it's got to happen, right? Because this dude, he joined the league and he just has not lost a game yet. It's crazy to me. I mean, he deserves it. His team is absolutely stacked. I mean, as we all know, 456 points just from the bats. That outscored a few teams in the league, just the bats, and he did that last week too in the extended week. It's crazy, and to look at the arms, they're right there too. Framber Valdez hurt, which stinks. Snell hasn't gotten going yet, which is an interesting development. The reigning Cy Young winner only dropped -6 this week, so obviously not ideal for John Hite, but trust me, he plenty makes up for it. Zach Gallen, just a stud. Corbin Burns showing out in Baltimore. Carlos Rodon. So he's got good players. Obviously, he's killing everybody as he hasn't lost a game. But Bry really put up a great fight this week. It got a little dicey about mid-afternoon today on Sunday, that maybe it could go back and forth. A clutch home run, I think, for Machado tonight in the night game kind of sealed it. But yeah, I mean, it's a great team that Bry has, as I said last week, and in write-ups for the preseason. Bry really went out and added a lot of depth to his team. The streaming rule kind of had made him, change tactic a little bit, I think. And it's working out for him. His bats are really great, but more so his pitching outscored John Hite by 30 points this week. So, great bullpen, Foley, Helsley, and Suarez, 3 really good closers on, at least up and coming teams, maybe not elite teams with the Padres, the Cardinals, and the Tigers, but still, solid teams. So yeah, I mean, and Cole Ragans, shout out Cole Ragans. He's been killing it ever since he got to Kansas City, ever since he's been a starter. He's just been killing it. So, props to Bry. Good week. Obviously couldn't knock off the the giant that is John Haidt, but nobody has. So it's nothing really to hang your head on.
Right. A couple things that I noticed here. I think one thing that kept Brian this matchup is John Haidt got a total of 27 points from his relief pitching this week. 27 total points from his relievers. Bra had 91 points from his relievers. 93 technically, if you count Zerpa. So that definitely kept Brian this matchup. And listen, Bra 651, uh, you know, using every tool that he had at his disposal. Um, that's 369 from the bats. 282 is probably a hair lower than what Bry would want his pitchers to be. Nonetheless, I think he had a solid week. He's got to be happy with it. When it comes to the Yard Goats, I'll say this. They're obviously the standard. That's the team that everyone's chasing. But I think this year this team is so much more exposed than last year. Now, I don't know if there's just some injuries to pitching. Maybe there's some, obviously losing Otani from the pitching side is going to hurt. Framber Valdez is on the IL. Snell hasn't got going yet. Max Fried has struggled, even though he was really good in his last start. The relief pitching seems to really have tumbled off here this year. I know he had Presley last year, who was the closer in Houston. They got Josh Hader, so he's moved back to more of a setup man role there. But this team can be beat this year. Last year John Haidt was beating people. He was scoring in the 800s on 7-day weeks, and nothing was close. I think this year this team is a little more open to getting beat. But listen, the offense, 456 points. It's going to keep him in every single matchup. I mean, in order to beat John Haidt, your team from your catcher to your third closer is going to have to produce and pitch in. But I do think that this team is just a little more vulnerable this season than they were last year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how long John Haidt can keep this winning streak going. And we will transition now. We'll go over. Let's go ahead, Paul. Let's rip the Band-Aid off here. Let's get this out of the way. Jabs Sea Dogs take down Paul's Tides 634 to 532. So this ended up about a 100-point matchup. Paul, go ahead, man. Tell us what happened this week. Why did the Tide come up short?
2 words, Julio Rodriguez. So J-Rod scored 5 points this week. No, he wasn't injured. The only game he missed was today. I benched him today, and because he was the Mariners benched him today, and he got caught stealing, so I would have had -2 points if I had just left him in. So, 5 points in a week, it's crazy. It's horrible. It's a replacement level type of player. I mean, sitting right next to him is Andrew Benintendi, who also scored 5 points, and he's a free agent, rightfully so. So, yeah, I'm not saying if J-Rod was J-Rod that I would have won. I still would not have won, actually. But I need my star players to be star players, is what it comes down to at the end of the day. And they weren't. And it's not just him. Xander Bogaerts, 27 points, a little bit below what I think he should be. Seiya Suzuki kind of dropped back a little bit to earth this week. Still had a decent week, but not what he had. And that's not even touching on my pitching. So my pitching was horrible this week too. George Kirby, -6 points. He's just had a really slow start to the season. I'm hopeful he'll get it going. He's got a double start this coming week. Hopefully he's going to get back on track. Tanner Hope came back down to earth after his first 2 starts were really, really good. So yeah, you don't win games in this league by scoring 532 points. at least not consistently. And if I want to be a playoff team, I can't be scoring that many points. I have to be better. I intend to be better. Hopefully my guys can start getting it going. I do want to shout out Colton Cowser, who I called up and only played in 2 games this week. He's dropped 46 points. He's hit a home run, I think, now in like 4 straight games for the Orioles, or 3 out of 4. So yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I got this offseason with intention to play, because I had belief that he would be a good player in Major League Baseball, and hopefully this is the start of that. As for Jab and his team, I don't want to just talk about just my team. I know that you'll get to Jab's team as well, Cody, but Jab had a really good week. 73 points from his star player in Bobby Witt, 71 from Juan Soto, 54 from Tatis. I mean, you add it all up, 465 points from the bats. I mean, when you have those type of star players and they act like stars, you're going to win quite a few games. I'm kind of hoping that's what happens for me for the near future. But yeah, I mean, and his arms, he doesn't have a whole lot. His depth isn't the best, but Luis Castillo is 28, Bobby Miller 33, Nola 26. So, I mean, he did it. He did well. Last thing I'll say, I didn't have a horrible week the whole way through. 47 points out of my bullpen. It's not bad. It's not awesome, but it'll do the job most weeks. And it outscored his bullpen, and he has Josh Hader and Kenley Jansen, 2 really good closers on 2 pretty decent teams. So I like that I held my own there. But overall, just not a good week. I'm waiting for Cody now to just rip me a new one. So what you got?
Well, honestly, I think I'm gonna give you the same talk that I gave Homco. I think panicking would be worst case scenario here. Your team is offensively more than fine, good. Maybe not great, but good offensively. 375 points, and you're getting nothing out of your best offensive player in Julio Rodriguez. If Julio just has an average week, you're up over 400 points offensively. Really, really, really strong performance offensively. Tovar's been a great addition. Betting on Suzuki's been a great addition. Calling up Cowser's been a great addition for you. Steer's been a great addition. Gunner's going to gunner. Nico's going to get going at some point. Michael Bush is it Michael? Yeah, Michael Bush has been on fire lately. Is he going to be kind of an anchor in your lineup moving forward? The offense is fine, better than fine. It's the pitching, and the pitching is just so inconsistent right now. Getting Lodolo back is huge. Freddie Peralta is going to do his thing every 5 days, and I've got nothing else after those 2. But I will say, George Kirby, you've got to bet that he's going to right the ship. I mean, right? No reason to believe he doesn't. Unfortunate to see Tanner Houck come back down, a really, really hard fall there. He was really strong in week 1 for you. Had a really bad start, it looks like, against the Angels. Just really inconsistent performances up and down here. But I think panicking it would be kind of the worst thing, because I think the team is positioned in a really good spot to win. I think you've just got to kind of maybe do what I hope Homco does, and wait out the early season slow starts. Let some of your guys get healthy and get back in your lineup, and this thing will kind of come together nicely for you. You're 0-2, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, here's the deal: you can finish 18-2. There's no reason to panic. There's still a whole lot of season left. So That's what I would do if I was you. On the other side for Jab, it's almost like I'm looking at John Haight's team. I mean, elite offensive performance, but his pitching is considerably lesser than John Haight's. And he's going to have to right that ship, or the Sea Dogs are going to get called a few times this year. 169 total points pitching. I don't know the numbers, but I'm pretty sure in week one this team was really down pitching wise, and he almost got beat by Connor. So, this is another team it's going to have to fix the pitching. I mean, I feel like we say that every podcast we do. The teams that are playing really well, oh look, their pitching was really good. The teams that are struggling, oh look, their pitching's giving them problems. Offense matters, I get it, but pitching is how you win in this league. And I think that both these teams that we're looking at right here almost have the same problem, and it's fix the pitching. On your side of the coin, Paul, I think it's more the fix is simpler because I think your fix is wait it out. Let some consistency come in, let some guys get healthy, and boom, your pitching's fixed.
Yeah, my fix is I have Kyle Bradish starting his rehab assignment this week. I have Taj Bradley, hopefully in the next week or so, starting his rehab assignment. I mean, I have pitchers. I mean, Erod had a setback, so I'm not sure what his status is going to be. But I have pitchers. It's just I need them to get healthy. And then when they get healthy, I need them to stay consistent. A Tanner Hoke who I'm not saying he needs to drop, 35 points every time he starts. But I can't have a -5 performance just sitting there staring at me when I'm only scoring 150 points with my arms. I need and same thing, Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea was great his first two starts, and then he lays an egg against the Royals. So, I mean, consistency is key. Obviously, everybody knows it's key, and it's just what I need going forward if I'm going to be that kind of a team.
Right, correct. So we will move on now. We'll touch quickly on my matchup with Dave's Red Wings. I'll kind of jump in real quick. 733 points for the Hot Rods, 471 for Dave. The matchup was never really close. I scored 361 points offensively and 372 pitching. That's kind of exactly the week I want to see every week, where my bats and my pitching is kind of right on par with each other. I try to really have a balanced team, so it feels good to, when I kind of get that. Just notice that Camilo Duvall never pitched this week. 7 full days, never pitched an inning. I hate the Giants so freaking much. That's such a crap organization. Anyways, but I do like the balance of my team. Mason Miller, 50 points as the closer in Oakland in an SP slot. That is just love that. Mitch Keller's been on fire lately. Matt Gore with a good start. Tyler Glasnow with an elite start. I yeeted Hunter Brown to the moon. Paul, do you blame me? -34. I mean, is that the worst start do you recall anyone getting -34 before?
In one start, no, I don't think so.
I can't think of a worst outing.
Yeah, I mean, I was checking my phone that day, and I was like, "Oh wow, the Astros are jumping on the Royals are really jumping on the Astros. I wonder who's pitching." I was like, "It's like Arrighetti or like some rookie." And I saw it was Hunter Brown. I had the double take. I was like, "There is no way Hunter Brown allowed 9 runs in that first inning." I was shocked. I mean, do I blame you for getting rid of him? I mean, no, I guess, because I know what kind of team you have, and you can't really deal with the growing pains that is Hunter Brown. I mean, I shouldn't say growing. He's 25. I mean, it's not like he's a rookie or anything. But at the same time, like, it's also one start. You know, I don't know that you just get rid of the kind of guy that I think Hunter Brown is and can be. I don't know. I mean, I get
say this.
why.
I'll say this. Let a guy go minus 34 for you, and then you tell me what you're gonna do. What you're
Oh,
gonna do with him. I don't
listen,
want to see him again. Okay.
listen. I've been there. Like dudes go. I mean, maybe not negative 34, but I've had dudes just drop absolute eggs, and I just want to throw. I mean, I'm freaking saying I want to trade Julio Rodriguez. He only had 5 points this week for me, a whole week. So
Right.
I mean, I totally get it. But yeah, like at the end of the day, negative 34 points. You're still the top scoring team of the week by 4 points over Hen Dog. So there you go. I mean, it speaks. I don't need to say anything else about your team that nobody already knows. Like 361 points to 372 points, batting to pitching. Just super balanced, really good team. You stole my tidbit about Camilo Doval, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, did you trade him or something? Like, did he only play one game? No, he
Yeah.
didn't pitch a single inning this
No.
week.
He's probably the most in terms of electric stuff. One of the top 3 or 4 electric arms in baseball, and the Giants just decided, nah, we're gonna let him sit down. We don't want him. We're gonna throw out. I don't even know who's all in their bullpen, but it's ridiculous. But yeah, they did that actually owning him. This is my second year owning him, and last year that happened multiple times where he would just go like a week and a half without touching the baseball. And it literally drove me crazy. But when he does pitch, it's like 1 inning, 3K save, 17 points. And I'm like, yeah, that guy's a dog. But yeah, no, I'm super excited with the balance of the performance this week. Ellie De La Cruz was 75 points. He had a great week for me. I'm really excited about the trajectory that he's on. Um, but yeah, I was really excited with my performance this week outside of Hunter Brown. In terms of Dave, I'll tell you this: his offense hung, man. His offense really hung all week. I would check the scoreboard, earlier in the week, kind of right around the time Hunter Brown laid that egg, and Dave's offense was just guys were just performing double digit points, every night from multiple dudes. William Contreras, 70-point week from the catcher position is just massive for Dave. But Dave's got a lot of uphill climb. He falls to 0-2. He's still trying to find some pitching. So I know Dave is working, trying to find a way to right the ship, but I do think it's going to be a little bit longer as he tries to build a pitching staff. We will go over now to, I guess, what really ended up a competitive matchup: the Oklahoma City 89ers, Chad's team, 655 over Bracton's Larks 596. So about 59-point difference here. One thing I want to say, and I'm going to turn it over to Paul. Let Paul talk about this one. Is really cool to see Chad in the mid 600s. You know what I mean? To me, that's kind of like him saying, "This team is legit. I'm here. I can compete with anyone." Because I think as we watch, week after week playoff, if you're in the mid 600s, you got a chance to win. And Chad got there this week. He got the win. Paul, I'll let you look over this matchup. What did you see in this one?
How about the resurgence of Reed Detmers? I mean,
Yeah.
Reed Detmers was a guy that Cody, you and I both owned at certain points last year, and we both got rid of because we didn't want to ride the roller coaster. But let me tell you, 28 points, 48 points, and 40 points. Those are his 3 starts this year. Like he's turning it around a little bit. I'm impressed, and I think we can both admit maybe we gave up a little bit too soon. He's only 24 years old. I mean, this guy is killing it so far this year. Now, I'm not saying that he's the Cy Young. I'm not saying he's going to keep it up even, but I mean, shout out Chad for identifying a young pitcher people kind of were giving up on. I'm sure I don't know what he traded to get him, but I'm sure it wasn't a whole lot. and it's paying off for him. So, I mean, those are the kind of moves that separate good owners from great owners, in my opinion. The
So
ability
I'll
to
interject. I'll interject real quick. It was actually with me on my birthday. I traded Felton Celestin and Reed Detmers to Chad for Shota Imanaga.
Okay. Imanaga's been good though, so and I like Celestin, but I mean, still,
But
it's
no, point stands. Detmer's been great.
yeah. Detmers has been really good, and 24. I mean, Imanaga's great, but he's 30, so the age difference matters there, I think. But I mean, Chad broke 300 with pitching this week, 315. So obviously, it's more than just Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter and Young Ho Lee. I mean, this team is good, and I mean, special shout out Jordan Westberg, 57 points, um, keeping Kobe Mayo down at AAA, so, with Westberg killing it. But then for Bragton, he had a good week. I think he traded Vinny Pasquantino twice this week, so 62 points out of him while he played for another team. Pretty good.
I
Uh,
think so. Braxton actually owns. I think he did trade him twice, but he has him now.
right, that's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
he had him, traded him away to Tita, got him back from Tita. So I mean, with all the back and forth, Vinny P still able to produce pretty solidly. Um, Shout out Bragton for calling up Jackson Holiday before he even took a major league at bat. Had to weather the storm that was 0 for I think 11 before today when he got his first hit today. Um, but yeah, obviously Jackson Holiday, really a good player, really going to be a good player. Um, and so we'll see where that goes with him. Merrill, good player, 36 points. Churio had a down week, but Bragton has a good team, at least with the bats. The arms obviously can use some work, but even still, his bullpen, I'm not going to do the math, but over 50 points, which is really solid. So, end of the day, Bragton has had a good performance. Just 4 points shy of 600. 600 is kind of the benchmark of a good team. And with all that youth and hitting that many points, I mean, Bragton's going to have a decent team this year. And his ability to weather the struggles that young players have, it will make the difference of whether he can make the playoffs or not.
Yeah. Hey, you really hit on it with Chad. I mean, I love to see the balance in his team 315 pitching, 340 offensively. We've seen that in week one. Chad's really proved he's legit. I want to touch on Bragton's team real quick because we're always on this podcast so quick to kind of point out his faults or point out the team's weaknesses. But this was a really strong week with what the Larks did. We'll call it 600-point performance. Offensively, his team scored 350 points. That was on pace with my team. This team is really, really coming together in a strong way. He got Nolan Gorman late in the week. I think he's going to be a producer. I think Jackson Holiday, he called him up. Shout out to him for doing it. But it's going to be a little rough, a little rocky here in the beginning. We'll see kind of how it turns. Jackson Morrell is going to develop into a great ball player. Jackson Churio is. And I do want to eat crow here because Anthony Volpe is shortstop one in the league right now. I've been hard on him, but he really, really looks to have figured things out. And if he is what Bragton thinks he is, that's an anchor for this team. That's big. And so far, Volpe's looking the part. Bryce Terrain has just been incredible. I don't know where that came from. But the offense is really, really good with this team. Really, really good. We have talked about the pitching, the inconsistency there, but this week it looked a little better than week one. Andrew Abbott with 33, Graham Ashcraft with 45, Brian Bello 34. He hasn't gotten who did he trade for? Jared Jones start yet. So he's added Jared Jones to the mix here. Um, he added Hunter. Yes, is that who traded for Hunter Brown? Bracton? Yes, Bracton
Yeah.
added Hunter Brown to the mix. Um, he's even got strong relief pitching this year. This team is better than it was last year, drastically, in my opinion. And I think this team's trending in the right direction. I know he's 0-2 right now, but like I said, for you and Homco, I think patience is key here. Let these young guys brew and get going, and this team's really going to be strong moving forward. So we will jump over now. Let's talk. Let's talk real quickly. We will touch on Hen Dogs matchup against Connor. The Beach Dogs scored 729. The Sod Poodle scored 533. I'm not going to go into this too much. This matchup ended kind of the way that we thought it would. I think even Connor called it that it would be about a 200-point differential, which is what it was. The only thing that I want to talk about, we all know Connor's kind of rebuilding, retooling, kind of getting his team where he wants it to be. But I do want to touch on Hen Dog with a very strong performance. 729 is going to be just about unbeatable most weeks. 521 offensive points this week. 500. Paul, how many points did you score this week?
Like 530.
530.
Like
This offense scored 520. It's insane. That's insane. The pitching went 208. You want to chalk this into the category, in my opinion, of John Height and Jab. Really strong offensive teams. Maybe need some help. Pitching wise, we know he lost Strider. He's lost Justin Steele. There's been some issues there, but really strong week from Hen Dog. Paul, I'll let you touch on this real quick. What did you see with this one?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on it. The offensive output that Hen put out, second to none. I mean, it's insane. Jose Altuve dropping crazy numbers. I think he's been the best second baseman this year. Pete Alonso, really good week. You're not going to be able to beat Hen Dog's bats. You can hope to keep pace. I think that's about all you can do. The way you beat Hen Dog is with your arms. That's his weakness. Although, I mean, I know he's had injuries, but Grayson Rodriguez, Bailey Ober, James Paxton, Yu Darvish, like he has names. Like it was Zach Wheeler. So that's the way you beat him. You just have to hope that those guys have an off week because his bats they're not going to have off weeks. He's too deep. He's too talented. I commend Connor 354 with the bats. Very respectable number, more than a respectable number. But it's the same thing with Connor. It's his arms, 180 points out of his arms. And he lost Bradford. So he traded away Spencer Turnbull, I think, today. So the bats are there for Connor. It's just, can his arms be there? And right now, that answer I don't think is a yes. I think it's a no.
All right, and we will talk about our last matchup of week 2. At this point, I think it's Tita versus the world, man. Tita's trying to turn the doubters into believers, and week by week, I think he's doing that. The Nashville Sounds took down Scott's Flying Squirrels 642 to 563. Sounds with a really, really solid performance offensively. He pieces the puzzle together pitching. I mean, I look at all these arms and I'm like, trash, wooden roster, should be a free agent. And then I look over and it's 36 points, 26 points, 22 points. I don't know how he does it, but he continues to do it pitching wise. Tita gets the win. He goes to 2-0. Paul, before we even dive into this, are you a believer in the Nashville Sounds?
I gotta say, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I gotta say, yeah. I had Tita ranked, I think 8th in my preseason rankings. That might be too low. I have no idea. It's crazy because you touched on it. I'm looking at the pitchers he put out this week, and it's like that's a free agent. That's a free agent. Yep, that maybe worth a worse, but then you look at what he totaled for pitching this week, 268. 268. It's crazy. And again, I'm not going to do the math. 80, 90 points came from his bullpen. I mean, he has Craig Kimbrell, who, himself personally has been on pretty much half the teams in Major League Baseball, I think, by now. But drops 43 points because he latched on with the Orioles, who are a good team, and he gets 2 saves. Reynaldo Lopez. I mean, he's a starter now, but still, he's relief eligible, and put him in the relief. Got a quality start for the Braves because he's on a good team. And I commend Tita. I commend Tita for identifying these type of guys and rostering them, trading them at their height, and just churning that roster because he does it, and he does it better than anybody else in this league. And if you try, you're not going to be able to do it as well as he does. And then so for Scott, really good week, 563. It's below that 600-point bar, but he was over 200 points with his arms and over 300 with his bats. So he has decent players with his arms, but it's the same thing where is he going to be able to stay consistent enough? Consistency is the key word in this league. It's the key word of this podcast. Can you be consistent with your arms? And I would like to say yes for Scott, but it doesn't seem to be the case. He has notable arms that just kind of go up and down. Nestor Cortez, Logan Allen, Aaron Savale. I mean, these guys will put out, 20 points to start, and then they'll go negative. So can he get that consistency, or is he going to have to try and find? I mean, it's hard to get consistent pitching in this league, especially with A, its value, but B, injuries happening constantly. So if he's not able to do that, is he able to beef up the offense? And he has good players. Sal Frelick was good this week. CJ Abrams is good. So yeah, Scott's team is fine. Is it ever going to be better than fine? That is his question.
Yeah, I guess the way I would answer the question about the Sounds, or am I a believer in the Sounds, is this. No, I'm not a believer in the Sounds, but I'm a believer in Tita. I think that
That's
he
fair.
can just outmanage. It's so hard for me to look at this roster, especially the pitching, and say, oh, yeah, I believe in this team. This team can beat my team, or this team can beat John Hyde, or this team can beat Hendog. I can't say that. But do I think Tita can beat me? Yes. Do I think Tita can beat John Hyde? Yes.
Without a doubt.
That's what is so interesting about it. And that's just like you were talking about him getting these guys for pennies on the dollar, using them for some production. When they reel off 2, 3, 30-point starts in a row, he trades them for 3 times what he paid for them. And it's just kind of this consistent cycle. It works. It would keep me up at night. I have to have guys I'm like, okay, I got my pitching staff of these players. Like, they're my guys for the next 6 years. Tita doesn't do that. He doesn't operate that way, but it works because we can hate on his team all we want. But every time we get on these podcasts and we're talking about the previous week, 90% of the time we're talking about Tita winning. So it works. As for Scott, I think you're right. I think the offense is already there. The offense is ahead of the pitching. It sounds like we're just repeating ourselves talking about some of these teams. But yeah, he's got to find some arms. He's got to find some consistency there. I will say this. Scott was a semi-competitive team last year. The pitching is better this year, so I'll turn him up a notch. He's a little above semi-competitive this year. He's going to win some games. He's going to upset some people, probably Paul. But the team is okay.
Definitely.
The team is
Definitely
okay.
Paul.
Yeah, this is an okay team with a I think you used the word fine team. I'll use the word okay team with a questionable ceiling. And what I mean by that is, who knows? It's hard. It's hard to look at this team and say, yeah, I project this team in 2 to 3 years to be really solid because he's kind of building differently than, say, what Smell does or what Braxton does. It's not go out and get all these prospects and all these 20-year-olds and kind of build up this way. He kind of goes out and gets a Sal Frelick, and he's got CJ Abrams, and he's got, Henry Davis, a lot, Bryson Stott, the trade for Bryce Harper this offseason I thought was awesome. This team could really use a bat like Bryce Harper. But it's hard to say what this team's going to be because I haven't seen anyone quite build the way Scott's building. But it's really interesting to watch. And the jury's still out here, but Scott's going to be competitive in some matchups. So that will end our week 2 review. Really, really good week for a lot of teams in this league. And we will jump over now and talk about some trades from this week. Give me just a moment here. We've had some activity during the podcast. Guys can't even chill out and let us do a podcast. There's okay, so
we're trying to pod here, guys. Stop trading.
Yeah, stop trading so we can at least talk about the trades, and then you can go back at it. So we will go back to, it looks around like April the 8th. The first trade I want to talk about. Let's real quickly, Paul. I'll let you hit on this because it kind of caught me off guard when I seen it. You traded Salvador Perez to Bra. You received Spencer Arrighetti and a 2027 second. Just give us your side of this, why this move was made.
So this was more me just wanting to gain a roster spot, basically, because as I've said before, I have guys coming off the injured list relatively soon. I think Nate Lowe will be back this coming week. So I wanted to lose a roster spot. Salvador Perez is 33 years old, still producing, still a good catcher. But I like Spencer Arrighetti. I know I've traded him since, but he's a good pitcher. Didn't have a great debut with Houston, but still solid. But I really like that 2027 second. I know it's a million years away, but getting second round picks, getting first and second round picks, I feel like is a big deal. I'm not saying I'm going to get entire drafts like Chad and Smell have done, but right now it doesn't feel like a lot, but in a couple of years that pick might be worth as much as Salvador Perez would be right now. And then so to get a guy like Arrighetti for free, in my opinion, I was just going to do that. And plus, I didn't even mention it, I have Logan O'Hoppe. I'm kind of ready to let him take over as my primary catcher. I was kind of tired of seeing 7-8 points every day just wasted away on my bench. So yeah, I pulled the trigger on it. Is it maybe the best trade? No. Is it the worst? I don't think so. Just kind of a trade that I just wanted to get rid of a spot on my roster.
Yeah, for me, when I seen this trade go down, my first thought was this trade has more to do with the player not even involved in the trade, Logan O'Hoppe. I think this trade was you kind of saying, this is my guy. I'm going to trade the 33-year-old dude while he's still got some value. Listen, I think it's pretty safe to say when players hit that 32, 33, 34-year-old mark, they can lose value so quickly. I mean, Salvi goes a week without a hit, and Paul's not going to get a worse for him. Like that quick, and it's over. So, but yeah, I think ultimately this was just a simple trade. Paul wanted to turn the catching position over to O'Hoppe and cash in on Perez while he still could. That being said, from Brad's point of view, he got a really productive catcher that he can use for this season and without investing too heavily in him. So it makes sense for both sides. The next trade I'll touch on really quick. Braxton gets Jordan Wicks. I get Drew Jones and James Trientos. This isn't a league-altering move, but I've got Walker Bueller and Justin Verlander. I think Verlander's actually starting Friday of this week. Really excited to get him back in the mix. Bueller's got one more rehab start left, and he's back. I really had to move an arm. I didn't want to move any of my bigger arms. Jordan Wicks was kind of the guy that, as a Cubs fan, I don't have a lot of trust in. I don't know how much longer they will keep him around the rotation. We'll see. And I got Drew Jones, who I love. Even though he struggled, I know the struggles. Still love the guy. Andrew Jones was one of my favorite players growing up. And James Triantos, who is a really good prospect that nobody ever talks about. Really, really good prospect, and literally nobody talks about him. So I was happy with that move. Paul, do you have any thoughts on this trade?
Oh yeah, I mean, Drew Jones, obviously former number 2 pick in the draft, son of Andrew Jones. Really good player. I've owned him before, I think. And then James Triantos, a guy that I've owned many times. You might be the number 1 James Triantos fan, but if you are, it makes me the number 2 James Triantos fan. I really like him a lot. I think he's the future, probably either at second or third for the Cubs. Probably not this year, probably maybe next year. Jordan Wicks, I like him. I don't know that I love him. I think there might be better options for the Cubs in AAA, whether it's Ben Brown or I don't know about Wesneski, but or if they go out and trade for somebody, because the Cubs have been pretty good to start this year. There's high potential that there'll be buyers at the trade deadline. And I think a starting pitcher is probably near the top of that list. So, I mean, I probably would favor Cody just a touch, but at the end of the day, Braxton gets the pitcher, and pitching is always king in this league. So, just a decent deal overall.
Absolutely. And Paul, real quick, touch on your trade. You traded for AJ Puck. You gave up Ryan Nelson and a fourth. Real quick, what was your thoughts with that one?
So AJ Puck's given up more walks than probably any starting pitcher in Major League Baseball this year. I know it's been a rough transition back for him to become a starter. Honestly, Ryan Nelson really wasn't doing anything for me. He was probably going to head to free agency in not too long for me. So I figured might as well get something that I actually somewhat like, because Puck had a great spring training. At the end of the day, if they push him back to the bullpen, I know what he can do in the bullpen. He's a very good bullpen arm that now has starting pitcher eligibility. So I hope they don't do that, but Puck is the guy that I'm more likely to roster than Ryan Nelson. Jordan Montgomery coming back this week, I believe, for the Diamondbacks. So Ryan Nelson might have his days numbered in that rotation. And he's just not somebody that I was super interested in rostering anymore.
Yeah, for me, real quick, I just want to say I think guys take for granted the small moves that improve the back end of our rosters. So many times you post a trade block and you've got, I'm just going to give an example, Luis Robert on the trade block and then like 18 other guys, and you get 12 PMs asking about Luis Robert, none of the other guys. I get it. It's always enticing to go after those high-end guys, but I think, Paul, like those kind of moves where you say, Ron Nelson is my 30th best player, and I'm probably about to drop him, but I can actually upgrade him and get AJ Puck, who becomes my 22nd best player, right? That's an
Exactly.
improvement that matters. And when the investment is as minimal as it was here, it's a win. So I like that move. We will jump on now. We'll talk about this one. Smell gets Cody Bradford. Connor gets Connor Norby, Dalton Russian, and Chase McDermott. I'll start on this one first. Really, really seems like a savvy move by Connor. Cody Bradford's a guy with not a lot of pedigree. Has gotten banged up early on in his Rangers career. He's been solid this year. He's actually been pretty nice, but I feel like this was a sell high moment. I think there's some regression, a lot of it with Cody Bradford. And I think Connor kind of cashed in on the arms race in this league and got three. Dalton Rushing's kind of fallen on a lot of lists, but Connor Norby is still just an elite bat to ball contact hitter. And he got, 3 total prospects for Cody Bradford. So I think it's a really strong, really savvy move by Connor. Paul, what are your thoughts with this one?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a very savvy move. It's especially tough luck, I think, for Smell because he traded for Bradford on the 12th. It looks like Bradford got put on the IL on the 14th, so he never got a start out of him. So really tough. But when Bradford was pitching, obviously very good pitcher. It doesn't seem like it's a super serious injury, just some back soreness. It looks like, but yeah, I mean Connor Norby is a really good player. Orioles system. I don't know that he sees the light of day in Baltimore just because of how loaded they are in the infield with prospects. But if he doesn't, if he gets traded somewhere else, he's a starting player in baseball. He's a starting second baseman in baseball, I think. He has that offensive skill and at least enough defensive talent to be able to be that everyday type of player. Dalton Rushing, you touched on it, kind of falling a lot. You can't write a guy off yet. Only I think 21 years old, 22 maybe. You just can't write those type of players off yet, and he has talent. He's just got to find it again. And then Chase McDermott, I mean, he's dropping, falling. I think in a lot of people's eyes, just can't find that control. Walks a lot of players. It seems like he might be ticketed for the bullpen at some point. But still, I think as a bullpen, his stuff will play up. So I like the deal for Connor. If Bradford ever gets back and shows like he's shoved his first 3 starts, then Smell has a good player to kind of build around. He's only 26, so he's a good player that can start that rebuild of that rotation. Let's say.
Absolutely. Moving on real quickly to another, I think, savvy move by Connor. He trades a 27 fourth round pick for Mike Clevenger. Mike Clevenger is a guy who just signed with the White Sox. They've got him kind of optioned down, getting stretched out and getting ready for the season. But the way I see this move, I actually PM'd Connor after he made this move. I told him it was a little Tita-esque trade here. If Clevenger comes up and even pitches decent, 13 points a start, 12 points a start, he invested a fourth round pick in the guy. There's something to be said about a move like this. Also, it gives Connor that option. Clevenger strings together a few strong starts in a row. He's going to be able to trade him for a whole heck of a lot more than a 27 fourth round pick. Paul, what did you see here?
Yeah, I mean, he gave nothing away basically. A 27 fourth round pick, that's so far away that it's nothing. So, I mean, Mike Clevenger at the height of his career was dropping 30 points a game. 2019, 5 years ago, he was dropping 30 points a game with Cleveland. So, I'm not saying he's that player anymore, but especially with the White Sox, who are just basically a AAA team. But yeah, it's exactly what you said. If he can come up whenever he's stretched out and ready to go and drop 15, 20 starts or 20 points a start, Connor's going to be able to trade that for 3 times what he got at least. It's a really good move because I mean, especially since we know what pitching is in this league. It's a really good move to just be able to buy that low on a guy that has history of being very good. So yeah, I'd say it's a great move, I think, by Connor.
Absolutely. And we will now get into a little more juicier action here. this was kind of the first big one. I feel like this trade sparked some chaos on the trade market in the league. Tita gets Vinny Pasquantino, Zach Neto, Michael Kopech, and Kyle Teal. Bracton gets Jared Jones and Jared Kelenic. A lot of moving pieces to this trade. I knew Tita was going to move Jared Jones. We talked about it in the last pod. What was he going to do? I think we all kind of played coy. We knew what Tita was going to do, right? Tita was going to trade Jared Jones. To me, this goes, there's two sides to this. One, Tita did exactly with Jared Jones what any smart fantasy manager would do. Jared Jones comes up, deals, and Tita trades him for an absolute haul. There's no way you can look at this return. Vinny Pasquantino is a top, he's a top 8 first baseman safely. I think you could argue he can even squeak his way up into the top 5. Zach Neto is somebody that, we've talked about. I think we comped him to Andrelton Simmons last week. We'll see. Kid's 23 years old. If the bat develops, it's a strong player there. Michael Kopech is putting up some decent numbers out of the White Sox bullpen. I still believe they'll eventually move him back to the rotation. I'm not 100% sure what all that's about. I don't pretend to follow the White Sox, but it does seem odd that a team that he's their best arm. It's, Garrett Crochet, but he's one of their best arms, and to just put him into some kind of middle relief role is a bit odd. But there's some production there with him having starting pitcher eligibility. And Kyle Teal is a high-end prospect in Boston's organization. So I know Tita was glad to get him. So I think he got what I would consider max value for Jared Jones. Now there's the other side of the coin. From Bracton's point of view, to me, Jared Jones, best pitcher Bracton's got. I think that's his ace. I think that's his number one guy. And we talk about pitching all the time. You have to pay up to get it. Bracton's not going to be able to get Jared Jones for any less. This is a 23-year-old guy pitching for the Pirates, striking out. I mean, his strikeout numbers are really, really looking solid. It makes a lot of sense to me from Bracton's point of view. And we'll talk about Jared Kelenic. He got moved to me, a couple hours later. Jared Kelenick's a guy I really like in Atlanta. A lot of people's like, oh, well, they're platooning him. Well, he's on, he's a left-handed bat, so he's going to face the righties. So he's the right side of the platoon that you want. And honestly, it's benefiting him. Yes, he's out. He sits, maybe 2 or 3 games a week. But when he plays, he produces. And he's really hitting the ball well. So I like Kelenic. So to me, I think both guys came out well. I think both guys accomplished what they wanted. Paul, what do you see with this one?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Last week I said that Tita should keep Jared Jones. But at the end of the day, it's all about maximizing value. And I think he did that. I think Tita did that. Vinny P is my number 1 first baseman in Dynasty. I just love the dude. He walks as much as he strikes out at the height of his abilities, which I think he's finally over his shoulder injury. I think he's finally, getting back to what he was. To get a guy like that, great player. I like him a lot. Zach Neto, we've discussed. Michael Kopech, so my wife is a big White Sox fan. I watch White Sox games more than I watch Orioles games now. So I do follow the White Sox fairly closely. I like Kopech better in the bullpen than as a starter. I think his stuff plays up better, but I also think that he has more command and control issues than maybe the casual eye or passive eye would see. So I think they trust him in shorter spurts more so than to handle 6 innings. So I do think he stays in the bullpen. I don't know if he'll ever be the closer because Jordan Leisure is a very good player as well. And I think he's probably more ticketed, more suited for that ninth inning role. So at the end of the day, what is Kopech's value? I'm not really sure. But at the end of the day, it's a good trade, I think, because Jared Kelenic is, as you had said, he's a platoon guy. Is he ever going to be the Jared Kelenic that most people thought when he was drafted, when he came up with Seattle? It's tough to say. And then Kyle Teal, I said it. I don't know who I said it to, whether it was Tito or Braxton. I think he's a little bit overrated as a prospect. I don't love him as a top 25 prospect, which kind of everybody is seeming to rank him as. I think he's a good player. I just don't know how good. Um, but his value is very high, and perceived value is what matters in this league. And to get that package for Jared Jones, who has only made, I think now 3 starts, it's pretty good. And I think Tita did a good job of maximizing that value.
Yeah, and I would say perceived value is a really good segue into the next trade we're going to talk about, because there's some backstories with this one, as there is with most of the trades that I make. But Braxton gets Hunter Brown, Cody gets Casey Mize, and Jared Kelenic. This is a very, very interesting trade to me. Now, maybe other people looking at this be like, I don't care about any of the players involved. But for me, it's not just that Hunter Brown had the minus 34 start and I was just going to yeet him to the moon. That was the goal, but I do like what I got back here. And I want to say it is easy when a trade goes down to look at the names and say, I would have paid more. I do it all the time. I do it every time you guys make a trade. I'm always in my head like, well, if they would have asked me, I'd have paid more than that guy paid. I mean, and we all think it. It's fine. I'm not knocking anybody for that. But I'm going to talk about perceived value. I'm going to talk about reality a little bit. No one was going to pay me. I had to have a starter back. I was not going to take I don't want to knock Colin Ray, but that value of pitcher, a 35-year-old dude that's been a journeyman that's had a couple good starts this year. I wasn't going to move Hunter Brown for that. I wanted a guy that had some upside that I liked. And I believe Casey Mize was going to be the best name that come to my door. The day Hunter Brown goes minus 34, the next day, 2 days after, everybody that was going to PM me and talk to me about Hunter Brown was going to use that against him. I get it. I would do the same thing. Okay. No one's going to break the bank for Hunter Brown after he just had a historically bad start. And there is multiple rumors that when Verlander comes back, he's the one that's getting the boot to the minor leagues to get things figured out. I can't be patient and wait on that. I can't have Hunter Brown go down to the minors. I mean, Matt Manning got sent down to the minors, my favorite player in baseball, and I had to trade him. So I'm definitely not going to wait on Hunter Brown down in the minors. I get Casey Mize, who has been rusty this year, has not been great this year. But let's look at what he did before the Tommy John. Okay, I think it was Tommy John, but he was out for like a year and a couple months. He was really, really strong in Detroit. Detroit clearly still likes him. They had a lot of, Detroit's rotation is almost like sneakily good. They had a lot of good options this year in spring training for their rotation, and Casey Mize won the job. He's shaking some rust off. He's not going to be great, but I like him, and if I'm going to lose Brown from my rotation, Mize is a guy I thought that's a great replacement. And then I got Jared Kelenic, who I talked about in the trade before. Paul's right. Is he going to reach the potential that he had? It's hard to say. Every day that goes by, it's looking almost less likely that he's going to. That being said, for what I got for him here, I feel like his production is more than fair, right? With him platooning, he is producing really well. I think he's hitting over 400 right now on the year. Um, and he doesn't play every day, but again, as long as Braves can avoid lefties, Kellenick's going to play most days. So I've had some issues with my bench being short. This filled that need. This replaces Brown with who someone I believe is a high upside arm that when he shakes the rust off is going to kind of get back to where he was prior to the injury. So all in all, I like it. Paul, I want to hear what you think. What do you think about this trade?
So I have thoughts generally on this one. So Hunter Brown, it's crazy. Just he's fallen, I feel like, a lot in perceived value in this league because like a year ago, he was going for I can't remember what the package was. It was insane though. The package, I think it was from Smell to Braxton or Braxton to Smell, whatever it was. It was crazy. Um, so to go for Casey Mize and Jared Kelenic, I know what happened this week. I know he had a negative 34-point start. I get it, but I feel like it's a little bit reactionary. Um, I know why Cody wanted to get him off his team. Cody's a championship contender very easily. And maybe he sees Hunter Brown as more of a, maybe he'll be good next year, 2 years from now. He gets to 26, 27 years old, finally finds his form type of thing. And that's probably true. I just I think there's more value to Hunter Brown than these two players because, like I had said, Jared Kelenic, and as Cody I think agrees, maybe he doesn't become that star outfielder. It doesn't seem like he is because we've had 2 weeks now into the season. I know that it's a long, long season, but I mean that Braves lineup makes Orlando Arcia look like a good player. No shade on Orlando Arcia, but it's a very stacked lineup, and he's still not producing like he probably should be. Um, and then Casey Mize, I like Casey Mize. I think he's a good pitcher, former number one pick. I mean, Detroit's a good team. They're a rising team. But again, it's the same thing of is he ever going to I mean, at least in my opinion, is he ever going to live up to that potential? So I think Cody gets two, not necessarily lottery tickets. They're a little bit more sure than just a lottery ticket. But I just think that more could have been had. Like for me, like he just said, like Cody just said it, darn, I wish I would have known that was the price. I would have paid more than that. And I probably would have. But I think Braxton gets a good piece for his team, because his team I think is full of a lot of Hunter Browns. He has the Jackson trio and he has Jared Jones and he has a bunch of these players where if they hit, Braxton's going to become John Height, and he's just not going to lose for a long time. But there is question: will they hit? And that's something that Braxton's going to have to navigate.
I'll say this, and then we'll move on because we've hung up on this trade for quite a bit. But I do want to say this: anytime I make these kind of 1-for-2 trades, and if you look back, I make them often. Try to at least. Where I give one player, I get two in return. I put the second piece aside, put Jared Kelenic aside. Forget he's in this deal. Hunter Brown and Casey Mize. Now, the way that I see this, which a lot of people may not see this, is I forget everything from the past and I look at the day I make this trade forward. And I could not find any reason whatsoever that Casey Mize cannot be as good or better than Hunter Brown from April the 12th towards the end of the season. I found nothing. I found nothing that showed me Well, Hunter Brown is just better than Casey Mize. Hunter Brown has never had as good of a year as Casey Mize had in, I believe it was 2022. And then I think that he got hurt in 2023, missed all year. But yeah, um, so I look at this as a 1-for-1 and I say to myself, Mize isn't on the verge of a send down. Mize gives me what I believe can be, a worst case scenario, equal production to Hunter Brown. And then I get Jared Kelenic, the length of that to lengthen my bench, give me some options offensively there. So that's just the way that I look at these trades. Now, I totally get, looking at it from a perspective of, well, Hunter Brown can be this. Hunter Brown can be great. I see that, I do, but I guess I just play odds, and I feel like every single day, every negative start the guy has, it starts to build up where the likelihood of that happening gets lower and lower and lower to a point to where I felt on April the 12th that by making that trade, my team improved. So I made it. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get you.
So yeah, just my thoughts there. We'll move on. We'll get to some bigger and better trades. The next trade we'll talk about here is an absolute blockbuster of a trade. There's going to be a lot to dive into here. Bracton gets Vinny Pasquantino back, Nolan Gorman, Zach Neto back, Luis Hill, Kyle Teal back, Carson Williams, Owen Murphy, and Travis Sakura. Tita gets Junior Caminero. Paul, you and I had a conversation about this trade actually,
Yep.
and well, I think we can kind of have that publicly now. I don't think either one of us said anything but basically the way that I seen this trade, at first, I almost like smacked my forehead, right? Like, Bracton, like, what? Give me a reason why you just traded Junior Caminero. Why? Like, he's the perfect thing for what you need. You have no third baseman to speak of. Caminero could be called up tomorrow. It may be a couple more days, a couple weeks, couple months. Maybe it's the end of the year, but being honest, it could be tomorrow. Why did you make this trade? And then I dove into what he got. And I really feel like with Bracton's team, there's some major depth issues that's kind of plagued him as he moves forward. And this trade really fixes that. Like, one deal kind of fixes that. We've talked about Pasquantino in length. Nolan Gorman, I told Paul, is a very underrated player. No one likes the guy, and I think he can hit 40 home runs a year at the second base position. That's massive. That's a really nice fit for Bracton's team. Zach Nato, we've talked about in length. Luis Hill is a guy that I don't particularly like. I know some of the Yankees fans in the league do. We'll kind of see what happens there. Pitching is pitching. Kyle Teal's a guy we've talked about in length. Carson Williams, very high end prospect. Very, very good prospect. And I think because he's got moved so much recently since I finally I held him forever. And then I moved him this offseason. I feel like he's moved 15 times since I traded him. And that almost makes people think that his value is low. But Carson Williams is a really good prospect. Really, really legit power potential. And he got Owen Murphy and Travis Sakura. So I think it boils down to, again, a trade I think both guys are happy with. Tita gets the best player. Bracton gets a haul by every sense of the word. So, yeah, I think they're both happy. Paul, what do you think about this deal?
Yeah, so they both individually asked me what my thoughts were before they made this deal. And I told them both the same thing, that I think Tita overpaid, but he got the best player in the deal. I mean, Junior Caminero is probably a top 3 prospect in baseball. If you're counting Churio and Holiday still, I think he slots right in at 3, above Wyatt Langford and above Evan Carter and Yamamoto, whoever else. He is that good, and I think he will be that good in Tampa. But I told that to Braxton, but then I said, but doing this trade doesn't fit what you're doing with your team. Like, he has Churio, he has Holiday, he has Jackson Merrill, he has these young, talented potential stud players, and Caminero is just that guy at third base. So, like, why make the move of trading that guy for? I mean, I'm not saying that it's in fact it's not all scrubs at all. Vinny P. Everybody knows my thoughts about Vinny P. Nolan Gorman. He's probably, like you said, he's probably the most polarizing player in fantasy baseball. I mean, because Cody's right. He could be a 40 home run guy playing second base, or he could be a guy that doesn't hit above 200 and strikes out 250 times a year and is worth absolutely nothing. Like, it's really hard to see what Nolan Gorman is going to be, but he's a wild card, and that's pretty much, like I said before, that's what Braxton's team is. It's a lot of wild cards. Now, I did tell him that he should take half of what he was going to get from Braxton or from Tita and get a pitcher like a Frankie Montas. Get a bat like, I can't remember who I said, but get a guy that's safe. Get a guy that's stable. Get a guy that what you're going to get out of that guy. He didn't do it. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's his team. But to me, that's kind of more of what Braxton is missing. And I agree that he is missing depth, but I think he's missing a stabilizer, a rock, a guy that he knows he can count on for 5 to 6 points a night. Doesn't need to think about it. Just plug him and play him. And I don't think he got that in the Steal. I do like pretty much most to every single piece that he did get to some degree. And I do still think that Tita overpaid. I think he could have excluded a guy like Sakura, like Murphy, like Carson Williams. I think any one or two of those guys, if he just didn't put them in, I think Braxton still probably would have taken the deal. And I still think Tita probably would have overpaid by just a little bit. So, I mean, it's a trade where Tita's happy because, unless he trades them, which certainly is possible, Junior Caminero is a guy that you can play at third base and you never have to think about the position for a decade. And there is definitely unseen value in that. But overall, it's an absolute grand slam home run, I think, for Braxton.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on, I want to echo what you said a little bit. This trade's huge, so we got to really make sure we touch on everything with it. I think where Braxton dropped the ball was, I know he may have made a trade block post about, I'm going to throw Caminero out there. He still moved pretty quickly from that post to this trade. I would not have traded Caminero, and this has come from someone who did trade Caminero. It was a little different circumstances. I got Ellie De La Cruz in that deal, so but in this one, I just really think Braxton would have been pleasantly surprised to see maybe what all would have come up out there. And you're right about, it is really hard to say. You can say, all these guys that Braxton got, Pasquantino, Gorman, Neto, Luis Hill, the prospects, those are all weapons for him and tools for him as he continues to build his team and get it where it wants to go. And that's great. That's going to do really well for him. But it's also really hard to say. But man, wouldn't that team look better with Junior Caminero on it? You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Exactly.
real, in such a good fit, like you said, with the Jackson Merrills and the Jackson Holidays and the Jackson Cheerios and the Anthony Volpes, and then you fit Caminero right in there with them, and you go, holy smokes, this team is what John
Un-
Haight's offensive team is at 23 years old. You know,
unequal. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I see it. I see, I'm all about balance. I'm all about lengthening my team. I'm all about that. So I see Braxton's point of view here, but man, it would be really hard to have his team and to let Junior Caminero go. So, but again, I know Tita's happy. I'm sure Braxton's happy with his haul. So it'll be really curious to see what what Tita does with Caminero, because Tita is dangerous when he has Seth Lugo. He's really, really freaking dangerous when he has Junior Caminero. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does with that. As we kind of wrap up on the trade review for the week, I want to talk about two more deals, and then we'll get into next week's preview. The two deals that I want to talk about, real quick, Paul, talk about buying Frankie Montas from Tita. You got Frankie Montas, Tita got Bubba Chandler and Spencer Arrighetti, and you call Tita a tit. Dive into this trade. What did you think about this one?
I
You
was like,
did. You totally
I
called him a
see it.
tit.
I see it now. I'm going to edit that. I yeah. I was like, called him a tit. I was like, what? No, I see it. Um, Basically, I was tired of like Sean Mania or uh Alex Wood being my like fourth best starter. So I overpaid. I think. I mean, I like Frankie Montas, but I really like Bubba Chandler, and I think Spencer Arrighetti's a good player. Um, but at the end of the, I was exhausted of trotting out guys that I knew would at best get like 5 or 6 points for a start. Um, Hopefully Frankie Montes is going to be better than that. But yeah, that was basically it. I just wanted another starter.
Okay, the last combo I want to talk about here, we're going to kind of talk about them in twos. Tita trades for Curtis Mead, four prospects: Jacob Marcy, Aiden Curry, Ty Pete, and Josh Noth to Smell. He trades those four prospects to Smell, gets Curtis Mead. A little over 24 hours later, he trades Curtis Mead and a third to Bracton, and he gets Colin Ray, Travis Sikora, and Owen Murphy. Um, just real quick, Paul, what do you think of Curtis Mead? And what do you think of Tita's kind of loss in gain there with trading the four prospects for him and then trading him away for Colin Ray, Sikora, and Murphy?
So yeah, Curtis Mead I think is a lot more name than production. He's essentially a zero in speed. I don't think he's ever even stolen a base in his MLB career or even attempted one. So he's essentially a zero there. His power, maybe he gets up to 20 home runs, but even that's a maybe. Uh, his calling card is hitting for a high average, but the reality is he doesn't really even do that. I know I'm kind of eviscerating this guy, but and I as a prospect coming up, I liked Curtis Mead, as I think most people, but the skills really just haven't translated so far, and I have a hard time seeing that actually happening. Just given Tampa's farm system, they have guys at second base, they have guys in their infield that either have speed or have the glove. I mean, Carson Williams, we talked about him. I'm not saying he's going to be a future second baseman, but he might be. Um, they got to play him somewhere. So I don't love it I don't love him in general. Um, Tita kind of took a bath on this, giving up 4 prospects, getting. I mean, I do like Syorka, but only getting 3 players back and then having to give a 3rd-round pick. I know it's 27, but still, I mean, it's a net loss for a player he only rostered and then sent down. So it's another prospect that he lost. So it's tough to justify it for Tita. I think it was a little bit of buyer's remorse, that he was more going off a name than actual production. But it happens. I mean, believe me, certainly I've bought guys within the last month that I immediately regretted and eventually either dropped or gave away. So I get it. It happens to all of us. But yeah, that's generally not a big fan of Mead. Um, but he traded him to Bracton, so Bracton's just collecting all the wild cards.
Yeah, so as we wrap up the trade section, I'll just touch on that real quick, just Curtis Mead a little bit. Don't love him. Don't not even sure that I like him, but I will say kind of a perfect fit for Bracton though, right? We just talked about him losing Caminero. If Mead can develop into I think he's playing more second base than he is third base. I could be wrong on that, but I know that
No.
he has both eligibility right now. But if he can develop, say he hits 290 to 300 with 15 home runs and doesn't strike out at all, there's value there. That can be decent for Bracton. So, excuse me. I see the move for Bracton. Yeah, not terrible. I do think Tita got caught up in a little buyer's remorse there and try to bail out. But I know Colin Ray's kind of that perfect Tita pitcher that he will use and then flip on someone else down the road. So that will wrap up our trade review of the week. And we'll go to the last segment of the podcast, which is our week 3 preview. We're going to kind of do this a little differently than we normally do. Not going to take as much time dissecting every matchup. We're just going to kind of bounce around the room back and forth on who's going to win and why. So let's start with a matchup. We've got a couple matchups of undefeated teams. Let's go with the Nashville Sounds versus the Hartford Yard Goats. Paul, who's going to win this matchup and why?
I do like Tita's team. I do like Tita as an owner. I do believe that John Haidt is going to win this. You can't pick against John Haidt until he loses. And I just don't think he's going to lose this one. His bats are too good. Arms are good enough. Tita gets his first loss.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I said it last week. I'm not going to pick against John Haidt till he loses. And I just think that his team is good enough to win this week. Tita's going to be in this. Tita's going to give him heck. It's going to be, Tita's going to be every time John Haidt has a 180-point day, Tita's going to have a 150-point day. It's going to be one of those matchups, but I am going to give the advantage to John Haidt's Yard Goats. The next undefeated matchup is myself versus Jab's Portland Sea Dogs. Paul, who is going to win this matchup and why?
Yeah, Cody's going to win this one. It's harder to say because normally you set your lineups and I'm able to see projections that are better. But it doesn't matter. Cody's going to win this. I have first-hand experience with both of these teams. I played them both in the first 2 weeks. The talent that Jab has with his bats, I think, is very, probably top 2 or 3 in this league. But unfortunately for Jab, so is Cody's. And his arms are better than Jab's. They just are. I think Jab would admit to that as well. So yeah, I'll take Cody. This one's I don't actually know if this one's going to be that close. I think Cody wins this one pretty handily.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be close. I think Jab's bats are going to keep him in this all week. The key to me winning is my pitching. If I have a down week in the arms department, my bats will not keep up with his bats, and he will win. But so far, my arms have looked consistent. I'm going to get Verlander back this week. Kind of undecided if I'm going to start him in his first start back. Depends on who he's playing. I can't remember who he was projected to go against Friday. But anyways, if my arms pitch well, I win. If they don't, Jab wins. So that's what that matchup is going to come down to. Next matchup we will talk about is Bracton's Bismarck Larks versus Bry's Rocky Mountain Vibe. Paul, who did Bracton play week 1? Do you remember?
Let me hang on. It was who was it? Oh, it was Tita. That's right.
Okay. Bracton's had a little bit of a tough start to the schedule here. Tita, Chad, and now Bry. Really going to be tough for the Larks to get their first win this week. Paul, who wins this matchup and why?
I do think it is going to be Bry. But this is, to me, I think this is going to be the closest match of the week. I was down on Braxton's team, but he has made good moves and he has improved, I think, his pitching a pretty sizable amount from just 2 weeks ago. I think he's going to hang in with Bry. I think they're both going to be around 600 points. I'll take Bry just because he has that experience. His players do. And I know he can't stream as much as he normally does, but he still, I think, maxes out that 10 limit for transactions. So yeah, I'll take Bry, but this one has some semblance of an upset, I think.
Yes. It's tough, man. Bry's team is really good. He's coming off a loss against John Height where he would have beat a lot of other teams. I agree with you on Bracton's team being better, maybe than we gave him credit for, but I'm going to go with Bry. He's going to manage the crap out of his roster like he does every week, and I think it'll be a little bit too much for Bracton, so I'm going to give the advantage to the Rocky Mountain Vibes. I do foresee this being within 50 points, though. I think this will be close. The next matchup we'll talk about may be one of the most interesting matchups. Smells Chihuahuas against Dave's Red Wings. Probably kind of consensus, the two worst teams in the league going head to head here. Paul, who wins and why?
Yeah, the result of this one, I think, will have pretty significant bearing on the draft coming up in February. The loser potentially gaining the edge to get the number 1 pick. I'm going to take Dave's team, I think, on this one. I do like his bats a little bit better. And I think his arms are maybe just a touch better as well. I think his best arm is probably Ryan Papayat. And I think Smell's best arm is probably Javier Assad. And between those two, I would take Papayat. This one, though, I'd be shocked if either team broke 500. Just the reality of each team's situation. But yeah, I'll take Dave's team.
Yeah, I'm going to go Dave's team too. Play Dave last week. I know what his bats can do. If he finds a little bit of luck in the pitching department, I think he's going to have a decent week. And with Smell just continues to sell off. Who knows what his team's going to look like, midway through this week. So I'm going to give the advantage to Dave getting his first win on the season. The next matchup we will talk about two teams really going in two very different directions. Homco, if you wanted some good news for your early season struggles, don't come to me because I don't have it. You are going against Hen Dogs, Beach Dogs. Paul, who wins this matchup and why?
Yeah, this one's not who wins this matchup. It's how much does Hen win by. It's not to talk bad about Hamco's team. It really isn't. I promise. But Hen Dog has his team just in a different stratosphere than most teams, I think, in this league. Um, I had him as my preseason number one team. Controversial at the time, I know, but I think the last couple weeks have really showed why. His bats are insane. That Acuna trade in the offseason really, was questionable at the time because people were like, well, you're giving up a guy like Juan Soto, you're giving up a guy like Tatis. But it's Ronald freaking Acuna. And when you're able to pair that, arguably number one player in fantasy baseball, pair him with arguably top three first baseman in Alonso, top two or three in second base in Altuve, top three in Jose Ramirez, top five Bo Bichette. Like he has all these players, and it's just hard to overcome that. And that's not even getting into his pitching. So I mean, it's pretty clear. I think Hen Dog wins this one pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Hen Dog the win, and my why Hen Dog's gonna win is because Homco has the worst luck imaginable. I mean, your team's struggling. You look up at the schedule, and oh, great, I get to play Hen Dog. So yeah, I just don't think I think the Cannonballers are going to be fine, but not yet. It's going to take a little more time to get healthy and get rolling. So I'm going to give the advantage to Hen Dog this week. Now we will talk about Paul. You play Connor. Paul, can you get your first win of the season this week?
I certainly hope so. It is not going to be easy. I can guarantee you that. Connor's got a good team. I had it before and I've lost it, but the first week I think I outscored him by like 80 points, and this past week he outscored me by not much, but he outscored me this past week. It's going to be really tough. Yeah, he outscored me by 1 point this week, so it's going to be a nail biter, I think. I'm gonna pick myself just because I'm not gonna ever. Well, that's not true. I would pick against myself in some teams against some teams, but yeah, it's. I'm not looking forward to this because I know if I can't get a win this week, that I'm gonna have a really long road to climb. So yeah, go Tides.
Yeah, Paul, you're going to win this week. Your team's just better than Connor's. He knows it. You know it. Um, Connor is also in this. Connor will throw everything he has at you while also selling off if the right offers come in. He's been doing that, and he needs to do that. I'm not knocking him for doing that, but I'm just saying you playing him with a very competitive team and him not exactly trying to beat you. I mean, he's going to try to beat you with what he has, but he's also more focused on the future than he is week 3 against Paul. So, Paul, I do think you win. I think you win pretty handedly. Get your first win and start rolling. Get a winning streak. So, winning streak going. So, I do think the Tides win this week. The last matchup of week 3, very, very interesting matchup. The Oklahoma City 89ers. Chad's team going against Scott's Richmond Flying Squirrels. Paul, who wins and why?
So these two teams probably have, compared to last year, probably have the biggest arrows pointing up. So it's going to be, I think, a very interesting matchup. I will take Chad and the 89ers to get the win. But yeah, this game has is going to be one I'm going to be watching. I think Scott has a chance. I certainly think that it's not going to be necessarily a blowout. But I will side with Chad here.
Yeah, you guys know you've seen my preseason ranking. I see a lot in Chad's team. I think he's going to win a lot of games this year, and so this is one I think Chad gets. I do think it'll be close. Scott's offense is going to keep him in a lot of matchups, but I think Chad is the more complete and balanced team. So I'm going to give Chad the win. So that will wrap up our week 3 preview. Paul, before we sign off on this podcast, just a couple questions about the league that I'm kind of curious. I think the league would want to hear. I know I want to hear your opinion on who is the best 0-2 team in the league right now.
0-2 team. So just for people, so they don't have to go look it up like I just had to. 0-2 teams are myself, Richmond, which is Scott, Rochester, which is Dave, Amarillo, which is Connor, and Bismarck, which is Bracton. So Bracton, Connor, Dave, myself, and Scott. So of that 5, I think it's close between me and Bracton. Just kind of like it was close last year with me and Bracton, coming down to that last playoff spot. It was down to me and Bracton. Right now, I would probably lean my team, but future, if those prospects hit, if Bracton can resist trading more guys like Caminero, although again, I like the return he got. If he can keep that together, and if those guys, realize their potential, by far Bracton's team is set up better for long-term success than any team that is 0-2 currently. I think that's not even debatable. What about you?
I think I'm looking here. Let me go back. I think for me, I think the best 0-2 team is your team. I would probably put Scott second right now. I think you, Scott, and Bracton, though, are all kind of the 3-0-2 teams right now that I see. One, maybe two of you guys are going to push forward. One's going to fall back. One definitely, maybe two of you push forward. My money would be on you. Just like I said earlier when we were talking about your team, I think it's just going to take some patience, some health, some consistency to develop. But as far as the current 0-2 teams, I think the Tide is the best one. What about 1-1 teams? Who is the best 1-1 team?
So again, to list those out, El Paso, which is Smell, Homco, Kannapolis, Bry, Rocky Mountain, and Chad with Oklahoma City. Those are the 4 1-1 teams. I would say Bry is the best of that 4. Chad probably next after that, but I like Bry's team probably a fair amount better. It's interesting though because Chad outscored Bry by 4 points this past week. So I can't say it's like a huge gap, which just in and of itself is pretty telling for how good Chad has done this offseason and how good his team now is. I would still take Bry though in that group.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Bry's the best 1-1 team, with Chad being a close second. As for the 2-0 teams, Hendog, Jab, Tita, me, John Height. Who is the most surprising that's still undefeated right now?
This one is a slam dunk. It's got to be Tita.
It's
I mean,
got to be.
it's got to be Tita. I know he hasn't played. I mean, not to crap on Scott or Braxton. I like both of their teams a lot, as I've kind of said. But I mean, nobody kind of thought that Tita would even be near 2-0. So, and I know he had a lot of help from the no hitter week 1 with Blanco. But even without that no hitter, like I said last week, even without it, he still beats Braxton. Even if he gets 0 points out of Blanco from that start, he still beats Braxton. To put up 642 points this week, it's it's a huge credit to Tita, the owner, because he just does such an exceptional job of identifying players, getting them in right when they're hot, and dealing them away right before they go cold. And it's I've argued, and we've argued for over a year now. Is that a sustainable strategy? Well, clearly it is. He made the playoffs last year. He's 2-0 already this year. Clearly, it's a strategy that works. And Tita is the master of it, and nobody else will come close. And that's just what the fact is.
For sure. And one of the last things we'll discuss as we get ready to sign off for the podcast, I've got a question here, trivia. Don't look. I want you to try to guess this off the top of your head.
I
Who
never cheat trivia. Never.
do what?
I never cheat when it's trivia.
Okay. Who is second in the league, team wise, out of our teams, the Hot Rods, the Yard Goats, our teams? Who is second in pitching points?
Pitching points. Well, I know that you are probably first. Is my guess that you're first.
I am. I'm first.
So second, that's a good question. Who was it? Who was it that had 300 points pitching, and who had? Oh, who was it? We just talked about it during this podcast. Now I can't think. I don't think it's Hen. I definitely don't think it's Height.
Hyde is fifth, and Hendog is seventh.
I'm gonna say Chad.
Chad is second in
Let's
pitching
go.
points. He is. Yep. I have 891 points pitching, and Chad has 789. Third is Tita with 782.
Oh
Fourth
wow.
is Brian. Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
but you got to think Tita
I
got
know.
the no hitter
Yeah,
mixed in there.
right. He's
Bry is
still third.
fourth.
Wow.
Yeah. So let me see. Let me see if I got another one that may see.
That's crazy.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this one's a little more obscure, but I've got to ask: who is eighth? Eighth in hitting points.
Eighth.
And I'm actually gonna give you a hint. This is who they're ahead of. Eighth in hitting points.
Okay.
They're ahead of Scott and the Flying Squirrels. They're ahead of Chad and the 89ers. Ahead of Homco and the Cannonballers. Ahead of Bracton. Ahead of Dave. And ahead of Smell, who is eighth.
So it's got to be a team that you wouldn't think, but it also can't be like an obvious like you or Height or Penn or like those teams. Is it me?
No, you're 7th. It's Connor,
Oh, there you
8th.
go.
Well, it's pretty impressive from Connor to
That's
be 8th.
good. He's
I
got a good team.
mean,
I'm telling you.
yeah, that's pretty impressive to be in 8th place. But anyways, okay, all right, Paul. As we sign off here, any final thoughts as we head into week 3?
Just go Tides. I mean, like you said just now, I mean, Connor's got good bats, and you know, you see Amarillo on the schedule, you're like, yep, that's a win. Not anymore. It's just not the case anymore. Um, I'm at level 10 out of 10 in terms of being worried. Maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know, but I need a win this week. Going 0-3 is almost a death sentence. So yeah, I'm gonna throw everything I can at Connor. I know he's gonna throw it all back. So I'm looking forward to it though, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out for the rest of the league. I think there's some good matchups this week. We'll see if any of those undefeated teams. Well, I think 2 of them play each other, right? Two of the
Yeah, so me and Jab play each other, and then there's one more. Me and Jab play each other, and then Tita and John Height play each other.
That's right. So yeah, there will be some undefeateds that stay undefeated and some that go down. So yeah, I'm looking forward to how it plays out this week, and I'm looking forward to breaking it all down next week.
Absolutely. And yeah, as I sign off here and end the podcast, I'm going to make a statement. Darius Vines throws a no-hitter against the Astros tomorrow night. If you want him, he's cheap. Drop in the PMs.
I was just about to say, well, whose team is he on, Cody? Yeah, that makes sense.
No. No, you heard it here first. Darius Vines with a Ronel Blanco-esque no-hitter tomorrow night. But
Hey,
that will wrap up the week 2 Base on Balls podcast. We will be back this time next week. See you then, and thanks for joining, guys. Okay, Paul, it's still recording. I have no idea how to stop it.
do you just push stop recording in the voice text?
In the voice text. Okay, they can edit this out, right?